The night on Kragath 7 was unforgiving. Twin moons cast pale shadows across the volcanic plains, and the wind howled through jagged rock formations like the screams of ancient ghosts. Most species avoided this sector entirely, too cold, too hostile, too dead. But Rhea had never been like most beings. She sat cross-legged beside a small fire, its flames dancing against the bitter wind. Her thermal suit was patched in a dozen places. Evidence of countless worlds and countless dangers survived. She poked at the flames with a metal rod, watching embers spiral upward into the black sky. That's when she heard it. A soft whimper, barely audible over the wind. Then another. Rhea's hand instinctively moved to the plasma pistol at her hip, her eyes scanning the darkness beyond the firelight. In the galaxy's current state, trust was a luxury few could afford. The sound came again, closer this time. Not aggressive, not hunting. Afraid. From behind a cluster of obsidian boulders emerged a creature no larger than a Terran wolf pup. Its 6 legs moved with uncertain steps, and its scaled hide, usually a vibrant crimson in healthy Kragathi predators, appeared dull and mottled with cold. The cub's triple-pupiled eyes reflected the firelight as it stared at Rhea with something between desperation and terror. Rhea recognized the species immediately. Kragathi apex predators. When fully grown, they stood 3 meters at the shoulder and could tear through starship hull plating with their crystalline fangs. They were feared across 17 systems. They were, according to Galactic Council records, fundamentally incompatible with peaceful coexistence. The cub, Tar, she would later learn his designation was, took another trembling step forward. He was starving. That much was obvious from his protruding ribcage and the way his legs shook with each movement. His breath came in small visible puffs that disappeared into the frozen air. Most species would have run. The Zelthians would have opened fire immediately. The Karushan merchants would have called for orbital bombardment. Even the peaceful Lumini would have retreated and reported the sighting to authorities. Rhea did none of these things. She watched the cub for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then, without a word, she reached into her pack and pulled out a ration bar. She broke it in half, tossed one piece toward the cub, and resumed poking at her fire as if nothing unusual had happened. Tar flinched when the food landed near him. He sniffed it cautiously, his sensory tendrils twitching with uncertainty. Every instinct told him this was a trap. Humans were known. They were spoken of in whispers among his kind. Creatures who didn't run, creatures who didn't make sense, but hunger won. It always did. The cub devoured the ration bar in 3 desperate bites, his fangs making short work of the compressed nutrients. When he finished, he looked up at Rhea again, and something passed between them in that moment. Not understanding exactly, but recognition. The temperature continued to drop. Rhea could see frost beginning to form on the rocks around them. The cub's trembling worsened, his body clearly not equipped for this sudden cold snap. Kragathi predators were desert dwellers by nature. This volcanic plain was far from their natural habitat. Rhea sighed, a sound that seemed to carry the weight of 1,000 similar decisions made across a dozen worlds. She patted the ground beside her, closer to the fire. Tar didn't move. His survival instincts and his desperation warred within him. Rhea didn't repeat the gesture. She simply turned her attention back to the fire, giving the cub space to make his choice. It was a very human thing to do, offering without demanding, helping without controlling. Minutes passed. The wind grew fiercer, and then slowly Tar began to move. Each step was hesitant, measured. His eyes never left Rhea, watching for any sign of aggression, any hint of the violence that had been shown to him by every other species he'd encountered since becoming separated from his pack. But Rhea remained still, her posture relaxed, her hands visible and empty of weapons. When Tar finally reached the edge of the firelight, he stopped. The warmth was intoxicating, pulling at him with almost physical force, but the fear remained. Without looking directly at him, Rhea reached out and, in one smooth motion, pulled the cub closer to the fire. Tar's body tensed, every muscle coiling for a fight-or-flight response that never came, because Rhea simply positioned him nearer to the flames and returned to her previous position, creating a windbreak with her own body between the cub and the worst of the cold. For several minutes, neither moved. The only sounds were the crackling fire, the howling wind, and Tar's gradually slowing breaths as warmth seeped back into his small body. Rhea pulled out another ration bar, ate half and tossed the rest to the cub without ceremony. Tar caught it reflexively and consumed it with slightly less desperation than before. They sat like that through the night, human and predator, separated by instinct and evolution but united by something more fundamental. The simple recognition that survival sometimes required trust. That warmth shared was warmth multiplied. That in a galaxy full of rules about what was possible and what wasn't, humans had a strange habit of ignoring the rulebook entirely. When dawn finally broke, painting the volcanic plains in shades of amber and gold, Tar had stopped trembling. He lay curled near the dying fire, his breathing deep and even. Rhea sat with her back against a rock, keeping watch as she had through the entire night. She didn't know why she'd helped the cub. Couldn't explain it in any way that would satisfy the Galactic Council's endless inquiry forms. But she also didn't need to, because that was the thing about humans that the galaxy never quite understood. They didn't calculate compassion, didn't weigh the cost-benefit analysis of kindness. They just acted, pulling trembling creatures closer to the fire without a word, and somehow, impossibly, that made all the difference. As the suns rose higher and warmth returned to the world, Tar stirred. He looked at Rhea with new eyes, no longer seeing prey or threat but something else entirely. Something the galaxy had been slow to recognize but could no longer deny. A human, unpredictable, dangerous, impossibly kind. And in that moment, Tar understood why they were spreading across the stars, not through conquest or superior technology, but through moments like these, small acts that defied logic, quiet gestures that changed everything. Rhea stood, stretched, and began packing her gear. She glanced at the cub once, nodded slightly, and started walking toward the distant mountains. After a moment's hesitation, Tar followed. Neither looked back at the cold ashes of the fire they'd shared, but both carried its warmth forward into whatever came next.